Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the final series, the final episode in section 1 of this 20-week live seminar series. Now, today, some of you are probably going to get a bit triggered. That's okay. Some of you are going to be a bit offended. That's also okay. And some of you are going to completely disagree with some of the things that I have to say and go, but Google says, but, let's have a discussion. Let's find out what it is that I'm actually saying. So today we're going to be looking at the world post 9/11 and the 7/7 bombings in London. It's a subject that I covered in my first book, Friday Bridge, which this seminar series is based upon. If you have not yet purchased Friday Bridge, then I encourage you to go do so. Like all good authors should encourage people to go and buy their books. It is book 1 of the Relentless Rebel duology. The second book is Wallahi, and talks about my time in Egypt living through the Egyptian uprising. But today we're going to be focusing on the subject that I raised in Friday Bridge, the world post 9/11, fear, faith, and fabrications. Yes, so let's get cracking. So one of the things that I realized, and I did a lot of researching, because obviously I'm a bit of a geek, although some people say I'm not a geek, I'm a bit of a nerd. My youngest son and I were discussing the differences between those yesterday, I think. But we're looking at how we are given so many narratives, so many ideas, so many things to believe. And we're seeing a lot of things manufactured. We're not quite sure what real information is, and the disinformation that we're seeing, fake news. We hear all of this, and it's no different around the post around what happened in 9/11. And we're going to be looking at how, the great British Empire, rule of warfare and colonialism was about divide and conquering the world. We divided up lots of countries around the world on different continents that we had really nothing to do with, just so that we could spread our rule, we can have control, and we could spread Christianity. Amongst other things. I'm not going to say they were the only reasons, but they were very key reasons. We're going to be looking at the impact on Muslim identity in Britain and beyond, and looking at, and when I say and beyond, I'm not just talking about Muslim identity in Britain, I'm talking about the rest of the world, but also identity in Britain, not just for Muslims, but for others that are associated with them or those that don't have any association. And we're going to look at a bit about, oh, I just nearly knocked my tea over. I've just been to the gym, so I'm a bit shaky at the moment, so bear with me. If I squeal, it's because I've knocked my tea down my dress. Then we're going to be looking at media bias, the political spin, and the stories that never made the news. The balance between faith, freedom, and fear in a divided world. So we're going to be looking at those today. So, and remember, if you've got any questions and you're not on live, do send them to me through the YouTube channels or through email. And if you are on live, put your comments in the chat and I'll do my very best to answer them. So let's get a crack-a-lackin', as Shrek once said, I think. So reliving trauma as individuals and as communities. Now, when we look at fear and we look at how abusers use the layering of fear, whether it is in domestic violence, whether it is grooming, whether it is people within the government, or whether it's parents. We saw it with COVID-19, with the COVID issues. We saw it with Black Lives Matter. We see it with so many narratives. And in the post-9, around I keep reading my slides, sorry about that. When we look at what happened around 9/11, I'm not saying that what happened was not horrendous. It absolutely was. Anything where individuals or groups of people are murdered in such a way, or in any way, if someone takes the life of another person, that's not right. I can't get my head around it, but then the mama in me goes, with someone hurt my children, watch out for the mama fire. But again, we need to look at, this is when we saw all of those journalists and reporters and all these government narratives come out, we lost sight of the fact that there were people who died in that, and then it was used. Some of you will believe that it was engineered. Some of us believe that it was an inside job. Some of us believe that it was that there were explosives built within the put within certain areas of the building, because if it had been a plane that flew into the building, then it wouldn't have collapsed in that way. We've seen so many conspiracy theories around it, but at the end of the day, we have to look at the fact that individuals died, families and communities were torn apart, and it wasn't just one ethnicity, it wasn't just one religious group, it wasn't just one nationality in those buildings. And it doesn't matter what my beliefs are, what my theories on it are. At the end of the day, we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to look at what it is to be human. Now, I remember a friend of mine was just. I was trying to phone him because I was watching it, sat on my couch. I'd just been reading, would you believe, a copy of Vogue. It was a Friday issue. The Friday had just gone, or it was a Friday. I can't remember what day it was of the week. But I remember phoning my friend who was in New York at the time, trying to get hold of him to find out if he was okay. And one of the things that the first things he heard when he got off the tube or the metro, whatever they call it in that part of New York, was someone saying, "It's those effing Arabs again." Not Arabs, Arabs. Now, Arabs is not really a thing. Arabs. If we're going to say the word, let's say it correctly. And within him, he said he just felt sick to his stomach, not just because of that comment, where there was no proof. Everybody automatically assumed they knew who it was. No one knew. And this was just the first plane. It was before the second one, before the other one apparently went into the Pentagon. Whatever our theories on it are, we are every September the 11th, we are reminded of what happened. And I know that it is something, we're remembering the firefighters that lost their lives, all the people that lost their lives. But why do we have to keep people feeling guilty or in fear for the actions of other people? And this is something that we see a lot of. We see one individual or one person, one group of people having to be answerable to everybody of that. They'd be like, I would have to apologize to men for being afraid of them because I've been told that all men are going to rape me. As a woman or as a mother, I've got to apologize for all of the bad mothers out there. And, men have to apologize for the persecution and the oppression of women. None of us have to do that. We are only responsible for ourselves. And yet we're all given these layers of fear and they compound. And it's like we kind of just get over it. And then there's another layer. There's a really great article by Professor Rachel Payne from Durham University, and I think it's titled "Everyday Terrorism in the World of Domestic Abuse." I can't quite remember the subtitle, but it clearly so beautifully demonstrate what I mean about the layers of fear that abusers give them. It doesn't matter whether that's a partner abusing another partner, or a parent abusing a child, or the government abusing the collective. It's the same kind of tactic or strategy. And what we have to do is we have to dig deep inside of us to figure out what it is that we want to choose, what we want to believe, because the things that we believe are things that we choose to believe. Now, I could choose to believe that because I'm a single mum, that the whole world owes me a living and I should be a victim. Absolutely not. I should believe lots of things, but I choose to actually seek out the truth as best I can. I cannot blame a whole nation or a whole ethnicity or a whole religious group or a whole gender for the actions of one or two people or for a small group of people. That's just ridiculous. And it's about us going, I'm better than this narrative. I'm more intelligent than that narrative. I am choosing to have a higher level of consciousness because the media are fueling a government agenda, one, so that they can have something to write about, Two, so that they can have funding and they can because the thing is, newspapers, we've all heard it before, newspapers do not sell when they're full of good news. They have to have bad news. And the advertisers on their websites and in their newspapers, they're big corporates, and for certain people to keep their jobs, it's better that we're all living in fear. One of the reasons why they don't change certain laws is because then, there'd be less criminals, which meant less police officers, less prison guards, less people off the street, less people being in control of their own agency. And so when we have to look at all of this, we have to dig deeper, and we have to understand, what kind of world do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a world where we just believe what the governments tell us? Do we want to live in a world where we just would believe what the media does? Or are we going to be responsible and look and find out for ourselves? Because we're all intelligent enough to figure things out. It doesn't matter how quickly we do it. We all have the capacity, in one way or another, to be able to learn and understand. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for a lot of people. Like I said, even people that might have a learning disability, or it takes them a long time. We all have a way of learning that suits us best. And we've got to make sure that we are living in a world where we're learning to understand each other, because, as I've said many times, the more we learn about others, the more we learn about ourselves, whether that's our own prejudices, whether that's our own ignorance, or whether it's like, oh gosh, I've got up my game, I'm really quite slacking over here. This is something that I'm quite passionate about, and I also know that there is so many different variables. And what I'm trying to do, I know that it might seem like I'm stereotyping, or I'm encapsulating everybody, and I'm trying my best to make sure that when I say everybody, I know that there are some people that can't learn certain things, people that have severe mental disabilities or disorders, but again, looking at things in certain perspectives. Now, as I've said, that fear has been manufactured many, many times, and we've seen it, and it's been weaponized. The government want to achieve certain things, and so they want to spread all of this disinformation. They change all the narratives, and they're not allowing certain platforms that we use on the internet to allow us to get access to certain information. It's one of the reasons why the dark web is there. If I'm actually now in Poland, as I said last week, and some of the things that I've been searching for today, I had to change my VPN to get into have it as a different country, because there's certain things the Polish government won't allow me to access. Like I've said before, think of it as your Netflix channel. If you want to watch a movie and it's not available in, say, Britain or in Australia, just change it to the States. It will nine times out of 10 be there, unless it's really old. And we've got to look at what the last impact of 9/11 has had. I remember when it happened, and then we had the London bombings shortly after, on the 7/7. That layering of fear, and the people that were traumatized in Britain by the 9/11 because of family or because of what they'd seen, their level of fear went up exponentially when we had the bombings in London. And because I had friends who were Muslim, but I also had friends and family that were Arabs and Muslim, I ended up losing a lot of friends. There was two people that come to mind that absolutely shocked me. These were really intelligent people. The moment the 7/7 bombings hit, my phone lit up like a bloody Christmas tree. And the hatred that I got from these two people. Yeah, I had nothing to do with the 7/7 bombings. I had nothing to do with 9/11. Lots of people had nothing to do with 9/11, and yet they were targeted because of the media narratives and the government agendas that were put in place. None of us really know what happened. We can only surmise what happened. And I've written here about the Holocaust industry, and if any of you have heard of this book written by Norman Finkelstein, incredible gentleman, who regularly speaks out about a lot of things, including 9/11 and the genocide that's happening in Palestine at the moment. what we're seeing is this industry that's created where people are benefiting and profiting from the death of individuals. Now, it's not a new tactic. It's not something new. It's not surprising to those of us who are awake rather than woke. And when I say woke, I mean white woke rather than black woke. And it it's become this thing where movies are made out of it, and we're all given a guilt trip if we don't remember the 9/11. But one of the things that we do need to consider is that if we are buying into these narratives, then we're part of the problem, and we really do need to start being part of a solution. Now, when we look at when I was writing the chapter, well, there's several chapters in Friday Bridge, and I was looking at the way in which the Muslim identity in Britain and around the world had been distorted. When I first learned about Islam and about Muslims, I was in high school, and I'd never met a Muslim. I'd never met an Arab. Um, there were only 3 black children in my whole school my whole school life, and I they were just there. They were just really great people. I never really noticed. So I remember someone asking me, like, how many black people did you have in your school? And I was like, huh? Oh. And I really had to think about it, because I only saw them as the individuals that they were. I never really saw them as anything else other than who they were. And it's the same thing that was happening with Muslims. They were never really on our radar where I grew up. And I lived in a rurally racist area, which is one of the reasons why the subtitle was called Rural Racism. And we have to look at racism as well, and all these prejudices, because some people are not consciously racist or prejudiced. It's subconsciously, either through generational programming, a lack of exposure to the world, a lack of travel within their own country, or because they have had this generational bullshit, for want of a better word, and fear, because they watch the telly and they read the red top tabloids from Britain, or the dailies like the Daily Express or the Daily Mail. Elon Musk, I mean, come on, you're an intelligent guy. Why do you even bother looking at what the Daily Mail says to you? The Daily Mail, I wouldn't even use it to light a fire. It's just toxic on so many levels. And when we're looking at like the Muslim identity, we were taught around 9/11 that it was people like Osama bin Laden, which so we're looking at South Asians. And then Arabs were targeted, and anyone with brown skin was targeted. If you were a black guy with a long goatee, then you were automatically part of the what they called, the people in America. Malcolm X left them. Oh, anyway, totally forgotten where I was going with that one. But we never look at the people of Malaysia. We never look at the people from Jamaica. Jamaica, it means a oneness. It means coming from there. We don't look at the Chinese Muslims. We don't look at the African Muslims. It was really, really focused on South Asians. And so even if people were from different parts of South Asia and were Hindu or they were Sikh, they were still put into this bubble. And they were targeted, and it was absolutely horrible. You had Arab Christians and Arab Jews that were targeted, and it really started to have this identity distortion that was going on. And anybody that had an Arabic name, regardless of whether they were Muslim or not, they were automatically targeted. And people they didn't know the difference between the Arabic names. And a lot of, when you look at South Asians, I think I touched on it a couple of episodes ago, or might have been last week, when you see my children and their names, you've got Khalid, Nasser. They're not Islamic names, they're Arabic names. And if you put something like Al-Din, like Salah al-Din or Ahmed al-Din, these mean sword of the religion, and the Nasif ad-Din is sword of the religion, or Ahmed ad-Din is pillar of the religion. Again, you've got to look at what the names actually mean, and these identities that we're seeing, they a lot of what we're are being practiced within Britain, then it's not the Islam from the same place. A lot of it is culturalized. So a South Asian will practice Islam quite differently in a lot of ways to an Arab, to a Malaysian, even though the skeleton might be the same. The flesh and the clothing of it is differently, to use the analogy of a human being. And a lot of this comes from the media spin and the political narratives. We want to demonize. We don't want all of these immigrants coming to our countries and stealing our jobs and stealing our women. And these are the kind of things that we were living with. And the Polish and the Lithuanians and the Romanians, they experienced it in Britain as well. The Irish experienced it before them. The Russians have been getting it recently. And again, it's like when you're looking at the narratives and the films that are being put out there, you could probably tell who's going to be the next lot of terrorists when you look at Hollywood movies. They kind of give you a 10-year head up. You know, like they did with COVID when we saw the 12 Monkeys and we saw Contagion and things like that. We knew it was coming. We knew something was coming. We weren't quite sure what it was, but just look at the movies. It tells you all the strategies that they're going to use. They weaponized us individually during COVID, because if you went out without a mask on, it was going to be you that killed all the elderly. Well, you know, not really, because of one thing or another. And again, it really doesn't matter which conspiracy theory or what theory you believe in, then you will, if you believe it to be true, then it will be true. Nothing anyone can tell you will change unless you're willing to open up who you are and actually discuss it and actually have an intelligent conversation where you can be, where you are willing to say, actually, maybe I've got it wrong. Give me this research. Like I say to you all every time, if there's anything that I say that is incorrect, or you've got proof that I've got something incorrect, then do let me know, because I'm always open to admitting that I'm wrong, because it means I've learned something. And one of the things that we saw is that people who had once been afraid of Muslims, when all of this 9/11, 7/7 bombings happened, we actually saw a lot of people go, actually, I know a few Muslims, and that's not what I experience of them. And we actually saw a coming together of the communities. So what we saw swinging one way with a lot of anti-Muslim hatred, we actually saw swing the other way, where people would go, you know what, I need to get to know my Muslim neighbors. I need to get to know more about them. I need to know more about Islam. And we actually saw a really beautiful piece of cohesion happening. And people that had never eaten together or ever become friends, they all started to come together, and it was really, really beautiful. And you know, I just I couldn't help but smile and be really touched by the way in which we broke down so many of the social stereotypes, and people started to rise up, much like we're seeing with the genocide in Gaza at the moment, where people have been so blinded to everything and the narratives that have gone on in the media, and you know how the Israeli government, the Zionist government, and the Zionist movement around the world have blinded people to what's actually really going on. And now people are waking up and they're really seeing what's happening. And I wanted to include this, and this is where at the beginning I said some of you are going to be offended, some of you are going to be really triggered and say, you've got that wrong. But I really feel that it is actually really important to make these distinctions, because as you heard, like I've said, Muslims that, you know, Malaysia's or parts of Africa, they live everywhere. You don't have to be a certain ethnicity to follow any kind of religion. Muslims and Arabs are not mutually exclusive. Muslim Islam is not a nationality or ethnicity. Islam is a religion, and the people that follow that religion are Muslims. I was only talking to somebody on Saturday who worked at border control. She did not know the difference between the religion and the ethnicity or the nationality of a person. She works at border control. That was scary, because if there's one place you really do need to understand that, it would be when you're dealing with border control and immigration. And so I put here, Muslim is to Islam as Christian is to Christianity as Jew is to Judaism. Now, some of you will really dislike this part of the slide, and I really don't care. But being a Jew is not an ethnicity. Some people will tell you that it is. Some people will tell you that it is an ethno-religion, but it's not. And you will be able to go online and you'll be able to find lots of evidence to the contrary. But this is just a narrative that we are taught to believe. But if you believe in Judaism, you're a Jew. And even if you want to change your faith to become a Jew, you have to then study Judaism. You know, a woman cannot marry a man unless he becomes a Jew or he is a Jew. And a man cannot marry a woman unless she becomes a Jew. It's the same with Islam. Used to be very similar in Christianity. But and when people go, oh, but they look Jewish, well, they probably look like they're from Ashkenazi or the Slovak areas. And people really do need to start wising up to knowing the difference between a nationality, ethnicity, religion, and a culture. Now, going back with the whole thing about looking Jewish, is it ethnicity? They say that you know, when you an ethnicity is a sharing of cultures, ideas, and language and foods, and but that could be said about anything. You know, if you look at all of the ingredients around the world, especially across Europe, we all share the same ingredients a lot of the time. We all share very similar cultures, but to be a Jew, you have to believe in Judaism, and if you don't, it's not an ethnicity, and I cannot stress that far strong enough. And I don't care who disagrees with me. And I wanted to address this because one of the things that we're being seen to have shoved down our faces a lot, and I've heard it, I don't know how, like a couple of weeks ago I was in Theo in Reading, and there was a chap that shocked me because he started on this whole immigration and, you know, all these immigrants coming over here and, you know, crossing the channel. And again, it's like they don't like it because they're afraid of the Muslims coming over and implementing Sharia law. And he went off on one. I was like, I can't even bother to have a conversation with you, because if you're that far gone down that, like, no, it's not a molehill, it's not even a rabbit hole, is it? It's just a long dark tunnel of ignorance. And we're just looking at people who are spouting the media narratives and these bumper car stickers and taglines and headlines that media want to put out there. And this, every time we see an election coming up, or there is a vote for something or a referendum, immigration always comes up. And so I put these here where people are going, all these immigrants are coming across to Britain, across the channel, you know, we're overrun with immigrants. So I wanted to share that since 2020, 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, so roughly around about 179,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel. And those migrants cover 6 main nationalities: Afghan, Iran, Iraq, Albania, Syria, and Eritrea. And those figures, these are all coming from Migration Watch and the Migration Observatory and the government, the gov.uk. Now, there are going to be others, but look at those nationalities, look at those nations. They're the places where, you know, we interfered yet again. But only in 2 years, look at the figure of the Ukrainian migrants that came over. 283,366 Ukrainian migrants entered Britain from one country in 2 years. Now, you can obviously do the maths, hopefully. So you'll be able to see how many more Ukrainian migrants came out. Now, I'm not against the Ukrainians, not at all. I'm not against anybody seeking refuge or asylum in a safety country, because as an individual who wants to be safe, who wants to be happy and healthy and protect my family, I will seek refuge where I feel the safest. If my country is not safe, then I will look for somewhere that does feel safe. Just like anybody who is experiencing any kind of domestic abuse or violence in any kind of location, they will be looking to move to a safest place. It might be another city, it might be another part of the country. So it might be an internal migration. But we have to look at the differences here, because the difference between the Ukrainian migrants is they're all white. A lot of them are all white and Christian. The rest of them from Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Albania, Syria, and Eritrea, they tend to be brown. They tend to be Muslim. A lot of them are Christian. But we're blinded by the narratives, and we're blinded by the fear, and we're paralyzed by the fear that is propagated by the government and by the media. And the difference between the migrants that came across on these boats across the English Channel and the migrants that came through the Ukraine is the Ukrainians are often funded by the government. They're given flights, they're given places in schools, they're given a place to live. We've opened up our countries and our companies, we've given them jobs. Not so much the case for the migrants that are coming, the immigrants that are coming over from the English Channel. They're not given anything. They're having to set up refugee camps on borders. They're being put into hotels to keep them all together because we don't want them integrating into our country. And we're seeing some really, really unethical practices when it comes to immigration and asylum seeking. So that needs to be addressed, because otherwise it's just going to create more and more fear, not just within the people who are living within Britain or the States. And again, a lot of the fear that we have of people is because people are still reminded every single year about 9/11 and all those Muslims flying planes into the buildings, and the Muslim terrorists, Islamic terrorists, and you've got the jihadis. And just so you know, jihadi means the one with effort. Jihad means effort. And if you put the I on the end, jihadi, it means my effort. So just a little bit of Arabic for you there. And again, it's looking at how these words are used within the media, so that people don't know what these words mean. So those of us that do know, we have a duty and a responsibility to put the correct information out there, because otherwise we're just part of the ignorance and the fear building that goes on. And it's about time we actually had faith in our ability to do the research and find it and actually cross-examine a lot of things. Because this took me, these figures, I mean, I've known about these figures for a very long time. I keep abreast of them because of the work that I do in the books that I write and some of the debates that I take part in. These are the latest ones that I pulled up this week. So these were correct as of today. And today, I believe, is the 21st of August 2025. So these figures, if you're listening to this in a year's time or 6 months' time, these figures will be different, possibly. And again, one of the things I was saying, we need to know the difference between the labels. We need to know the difference between, someone like, I remember a couple of years ago, the English Defence League, the EDL, very far right, very racist group of individuals, they would say Muslimics. They couldn't even get the word correct. It wasn't a Muslim, it wasn't Islam, like they were Muslimics. That shows the level of ignorance, lack of education that these people have. And like I said, it's down to those of us who know the difference to actually teach the difference. Do you know the difference between a refugee, an asylum seeker, and a migrant? Someone seeking asylum, they're looking at a place of safety away from their country. A refugee is somebody who's made their way. You can find all of these different examples on praxis.org.uk. The refugee is somebody who's actually arrived in a different country and is seeking a new place to be. And again, do we know the difference between a migrant and an immigrant? Do you know the difference? Like I've put here, what's the difference between a migrant and a digital nomad? There is none. A migrant is someone who continually travels, often for work or often for food. We saw it, the nomads, the sailors. We saw it with the Badawis of the caravanserais in the Arab deserts. We saw it with the gypsies. We've seen it with the people across the East Asia and South Asia. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it across Africa and Latin America. We've had migrants all over, and again, they could be internal, they could be international. There is nothing different between a migrant and a digital nomad. There really isn't. The other thing that we need to look at when we're looking at labels and how we would class the certain groups of people, it's expat and immigrants. What's really the difference there? Because a lot of expats go and live in a different country and they have no intention of returning, but they call themselves an expat rather than an immigrant. And I remember when I was taking the boys to go and live in Egypt just before the Egyptian uprising kicked off, which is what my second book, Wallahi, is all about. And I remember one of the mums in the private school where my boys went, She was like, "Oh, it's just so wonderful that you're taking your children to go live in a different country. What a fabulous experience for them," and blah, 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 blah. And she goes, "But, all these immigrants coming here to this country, coming here, getting jobs, sending money back home to their wives and their families." I was like, "I know, it's absolutely terrible, isn't it? Oh my goodness." I said, "And we've got all of these people, like these husbands here, going off to work in Switzerland while their women, their wives and their children stay here, and they're earning these big salaries in Switzerland so they can send the money back here to Britain so their children can go to private schools and they can live in these big houses and go on these fancy holidays." Completely lost on this woman, which, says it all really. But she really couldn't see the difference that, there are people that are coming to a country, to live for a short period of time and a period of, for a permanent piece of time. And she couldn't make the difference between them. Now, an expat does tend to just stay for a shorter period of time, but a lot of the time they enjoy where they live. They've built a family there, they've built a life there, they've got friendship groups, and they do tend to stay. So that then becomes an immigrant. But there is no difference. But we tend to look at the color of their skin and judge them, or we look at the fact that their religion, and that is what distorts the and creates this fear. And it's just a level of ignorance that we really should be beyond in 2025. And again, when we look at expats, it tends to be more of a social status. They're really high senior executives. They come from privilege, or there are certain certain set of circumstances. Gosh, try and say that after a couple of glasses of wine. This is tea, by the way. And it's about us really understanding what our knowledge is. Don't be afraid to ask the questions about the things you do not know. Again, if you've got a fear, have faith in yourself to learn about it so you can destroy the fabrications that are being told to us. Again, one of the reasons why this is called Fear, Faith, and Fabrications, because people are educated to a certain level, but they're not educated in their confidence, or they're not educated enough to question what they're being taught. I am that annoying child that would always put my hand up and go, "But why? Why is that? How does that work? Why do we think that? What's happening?" And it's these questions that will actually have you dive deeper and actually become educated. It's not about being school smart or textbook smart. It is about traveling. It is about knowing what's going on in the world. And remember that if you're going somewhere and you're going all inclusive or you're going exclusive, then you're not really traveling. You're not really learning about the country. And again, to think of the words inclusive and exclusive. If you're not including, by default, you're excluding. And so you really need to look at why you're excluding people from your circle. And as I mentioned last week when I covered on the DEI or the EDI, depending on which country you're in, if you are an expert in equity and diversity and inclusion, but your own personal network and family of friends and your professional network isn't diverse, are you really understanding equity and inclusion? Or did you just do a training course? Again, looking at, do we really trust the government? I don't really know anybody who trusts the government in lots of different areas. It might be that they trust them in one thing, but not in another. When we look at the education policies around 9/11, what we saw was anti-terror laws were actually whacked on the bottom of education policies where they would actually get overlooked. We're seeing anti-terror laws actually being put in amongst different legislation, so that then it's the way that it's woven into. Now, this last couple of weeks, I've been studying the Keeping Children Safe in Education policies and the guidelines for those, and preparing some research for one of my up and coming books called Social. And there are certain things in there that I'm like, how do people not realize what there is that they're being asked to teach? How do they not realize what it is that's glaringly obvious? Now, I'm not going to go into it today because that's a different thing, and we're talking about bullying in schools next week. But again, it's like when we're looking at these government statistics, or we're looking at what the government narratives are, do you always believe everything that they tell you? Do you trust them? Really? Do you really believe all the news reports you see? And if you are believing the news, how are you quantifying? How are you making sure that the data and the evidence that you're being given, how are you making sure that it's fact? Why are you cross-referencing it with other material? Where are you cross-referencing it with other data? Do you know something to be true? So, for example, going back to the people who knew me and my ex-husband, they had known us for years. They knew what kind of people we were. But after 9/11 and then 7/7, we were no good. We were as equal as the terrorists. And yet these were intelligent people. Is this you? Is that kind of is that the kind of person, somebody you have known and trusted and been friends with, and then you hear a rumor or you hear something on the news and then you become really quite suspicious of them? Again, why is that? Do you not know who you can trust? Do you not trust yourself to trust other people? These are essential questions that we need to be asking ourselves, because it doesn't matter what kind of fear we have, we need to learn how to challenge that fear. Now, it could be a fear of heights, it could be a fear of leaving the house, it could be a fear of men, that women are, if you look at social media, every woman should be afraid of every single man on the planet because they're all out to rape us. It's a lie, they're not. And as somebody who has been raped, then it is something that I am very aware of, and I still go to a sauna, and if there is a man there, I don't suspect that he's going to do that to me. And speaking of saunas, it was really quite interesting. I've forgotten till I mentioned this. Just after 7/7, I was sat in the sauna at Virgin Gyms in Sheffield, and I was having a conversation with a gentleman in Arabic, and there was another gentleman in there, and he was of Indian descent, and the Arabic gentleman, he left, and then the guy of Indian descent turned around and said to me, "Aren't you afraid of speaking to them?" I was like, "Sorry, what?" He goes, "Aren't you afraid of speaking with them?" I was like, "With who?" He goes, "The Arabs." I was like, "Well, obviously not. No. Why would I be?" He goes, "Well, they're from like terrorism." And I said, "Oh, okay. What makes you say that?" I mean, I wanted him to open up and tell me why he was thinking that. He goes, "Well, the newspapers say, Arabs and Muslims said that they're terrorists." But yeah, but yes, I didn't. If I believed everything that I was to read in the newspapers, I said I should be afraid of being in a sauna with you. You're brown and you're a man, so obviously you're going to rape me. And he was really quite shaken by what I'd said. But he had fallen for the narratives. He had fallen for the rhetoric and this false propaganda. And remember, 96% of the world's media are owned by Zionists. So obviously, the media reports that you're going to find and the news reports and the facts that you're going to find on the Google, they're going to be in favor of the Zionist movement. That's one of the reasons why it took so long for everything to come out for those who were not willing to dig a bit deeper about the genocide in Palestine. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine that's going on. How many people know that the Zionists actually targeted the journalist tents and actually killed Anas al-Sharia, one of the leading voices of Palestinian journalism? And this is the thing, it's like we have to really look at what's being hidden from us. And that some people say, well, how can we find if it's hidden from us? Well, you ask smarter questions. You dig a bit deeper. You look at different sources. You change your VPN. You ask better questions. Because the thing is that if we want this world to be a much nicer place, and we want all of this killing to stop, and we want all of this fear to stop, where people are living in such fear of one another, that there's so much hatred, but guess what? There is so much love out there. There is so much community out there. And you've got these people that are going, I'm done with it. Find those people. Find the people who are challenging your limited beliefs and building on those people that are building your fear. Start looking for people who are going to help you dismantle your fear. Have faith in the other people. Have faith in people who do the research. Have faith in people that don't just tell you what is comfortable for you to hear. Get uncomfortable, because when you get uncomfortable, we dismantle our fears of being with people. You know, if I was going to do any kind of healing after what happened to me with when I was raped, I would be afraid of men forever. But I didn't want that. Why would I live with that fear? We have to heal ourselves. Instead of numbing it with big pharma drugs, we have to feel the fear, embrace it, thank it, learn from it, acknowledge it, release it, so that we can become people who trust and love and have faith in one another, have faith in ourselves. And then we'll be able to see through this nasty rhetoric and these terrible narratives that are out there. Again, we're looking at, I mean, I put here, walk a day, travel, open your heart and open your mind, because when we travel, we open our mind. There are certain things that I've said to my youngest son. I'm confronted by certain things, you know. I've been triggered by a few things here. You know, I was like, well, nobody's smiling. Why is nobody smiling? Where are all the dogs gone? Where are all the small children? You know, like, Poland is a beautiful country. Oh, it's not my arm is over. Poland is a beautiful country. And I was like, well, where are the small children? Where aren't they playing? And that's because obviously certain areas, they, you know, again, lots of different areas of the world. You go to Eastbourne. Years ago, Eastbourne in England, that's where a lot of old age pensioners would go, because it was very quiet. It was by the sea. It wasn't touristic with lots of families. Again, that's where an area which we've traveled, we've moved across the country, we're doing lots of different things. We're walking a day in the lives of people. We're just living life. We're not eating in touristic areas. We're being part of the local community, and we're open to all these new experiences. And like, what can we learn? What words can we learn? What phrases can we learn? Where does this come from? Oh, looking at the history of places, you know, and really learning about the ingredients of the food. You know, well, is this a flavor that's from Poland, like dill? You know, dill is a very Polish herb. Looking at, you know, how Poland is made up of lots of different people, and, you know, and then you're looking at places that, you know, if the nearer the border with Ukraine, people are going to be a little bit worried. People are going to be a bit sad because of the war that's going on there. And again, looking at context for people's behavior, looking at context and additional knowledge that you can gain, so that you become a better person, so that you can become a more inclusive person, you can become a more loving person, a more welcoming person. We don't always have to agree with somebody else's way of life, but we can always be a kind person. And that's what I really want to achieve with this series, about understanding. Oh, no, I'm finished. So I was really getting into it today, as you could tell. So again, not everything is as it seems. You know, we've been, people of my age in Britain, we were taught, you know, Poland's really, really poor. No, it's very wealthy in a lot of areas. You know, every area we've been to is very wealthy. That, you know, the pound might be stronger than the zloty. I can't say it. The zloty. I'm getting there. I'm remembering what the line across the L means and everything. I'm getting there. You know, and again, it's like, oh my gosh, I've had this impression of Poland all my life, and this is why I travel, because I don't want to have ignorance. I want to meet people and I want to learn about them and history on their terms. And, you know, they're really lovely people so far. And oh my God, we went out for dinner last night. The food was amazing. Silesian dumplings. If you haven't ever had those, make sure you do. Delicious. And remember, the system is not broken. Lots of people go, oh, the system's broken, but it absolutely isn't. It is working exactly as they want it to. They want us to be in fear of one another. They want us to be divided because we're easier to manipulate. We're easier to control. When we are divided, we get to fight their wars for them. They're not our wars. Return to sender. It's not mine. Your war is not my war. I am not going to judge a whole nation of people or a whole religion of people because of the actions of one. And if you're somebody who is going to blame an entire ethnicity or entire nation or a group of believers, I have Israeli friends. I am not anti-Israeli. I'm anti-Zionist. I'm not anti-Jew. I have Jewish friends. You know, we all believe that the genocide in Gaza is wrong. The genocide of any nation is wrong. The killing of others is wrong. Unless you've hurt my children, then I will come for you, trust me, and I will help my boys bury a body. Probably not, but you know, I'm being a bit facetious here now. But again, if you're being caught into other people's gossip, it's not my story. I'm not interested in gossip. I don't want to talk about other people. I want to talk about situations. I want to find out the truth. I want to find out the facts. How can I get to the facts? How deep do I have to go to get to the information that is accurate? How do I know it's accurate? We test it. We test the data. We test the theory. We go, we find out for ourselves. We do not listen to other people. And remember, look inside. Soul always knows. Don't say, well, I don't know, because you do know. You do know that you don't have enough information, or you do know that you have enough information. It's just making you uncomfortable. Get rid of the comfort and start getting uncomfortable and start seeking a deeper level of knowledge. And remember, choose wisely the people around you, the information you take on, the environments you keep, and always choose joy, not just for you, but for everybody. And always choose yourself at every level. So that's it for today on this presentation. Now, I wanted to share with you the, I don't want to do that. No, I don't. Let me get rid of that. I want to share with you this here, because one of the things I didn't cover today is this book here, because Friday Bridge is what this series is built on. But one of the things that the 7/7 bombings in London had, well, it had a huge effect. Now, Faith, Leaving Religion to Save Your Soul. This is the 5th book in the Sacral series. Now, it's not what you probably think it would be. Did Faith leave his religion? You're going to have to read the book to find out. But what happened was the Pakistani communities of Britain were targeted, and the anti-terror laws became terrorism for a lot of Muslims in Britain, and a lot of non-Muslims, but a lot of brown people. And one of the things that happened was the spelling of people's names. If you get one letter incorrect with a lot of names from overseas, or you put the vowel in the wrong place, you can change the whole meaning and the whole pronunciation of the name. So this might be a book that you might want to read if you want to understand how Malek or Malik, very different names, but Faith's brother, I'm not going to go into too much details because that would be wrong, because I don't want to give away the plot. But I do recommend you read Faith as well as the Friday Bridge. You can buy them on the site, and if you do want to buy them from me, signed copy, just send me an email and I'll get them sent out to you. But Friday Bridge and Faith will give you a very good indication as to what the 7/7 bombings and post 9/11 had on the Muslim community of Britain. And again, this is a true story. All the books in the Sacral series, they're true stories. I've had to change certain I've had to give them different identities to protect them and their families. But they're all 9 true stories that were trusted to me to write. But this was a really hard story to write, because it very dear person, and was indicative of a lot of what my friends and family and the wider Muslim community of Britain went through. So if you want to learn more, do go along to dawnbates.com/faith or dawnbates.com/relentlessrebel. We are going to be putting them into bundles shortly. And if you do want to book a session with me to find out how to write a book on sensitive subjects and have the confidence like me to speak out on them, knowing that you're probably going to get hatred or you're going to get a lot of people come back at you and say, that's wrong, you offended, whatever it is that they're going through, then if you want to write a book that you're a bit afraid of writing, then do let me know and I will do my very best to help you. Right, now I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to stop sharing. If I can, bear me a second. Keep pulling faces at you all. But yes, I think I've stopped sharing now. But thank you all so very much for joining me. Those of you who are online, we're now going to go into a Q&A. Those of you who are watching the replay, if you've got any questions, do send them through, add them underneath the bottom of the video, and I will get back to you either as soon as possible, or my VA will point you in the right direction for certain things. Thank you so very much. And yeah, have fun. Choose you, choose wisely. Remember, soul always knows. Ciao for now.